The war in Ukraine has transformed from a regional conflict into something much more ancient and unsettling. On the surface, it's a modern war of drones and satellite intelligence, yet the maps being drawn in the Kremlin look more like the 19th century than the 21st. We see a world that promised to respect borders suddenly paralyzed as a major power claims the right to swallow its neighbor based on medieval history. Why is the most advanced era of human history witnessing the return of imperial spheres of influence? Is this just a local dispute over land, or are we watching the literal rebirth of the Russian Empire and the collapse of the modern nation-state? In this video, we are going to clear all these confusions or find answer of all these questions in the video. So let's start. To understand what is happening in Ukraine right now, we have to stop looking at it as a simple border war. In the minds of the leadership in Moscow, this isn't about moving a fence line 10 miles to the west, it's about a concept called the Russian world. This is an old imperial idea that suggests wherever Russian is spoken and wherever the Orthodox Church stands, that land belongs to a single central authority. For 30 years, the world thought this kind of thinking was dead, buried under the ruins of the Berlin Wall. But in 2025, it is back with a vengeance. The first major confusion we have to clear up is the why. Most people think wars are fought for resources or strategic ports, and while the coal of the Donbass and the waters of the Black Sea are important, they aren't the primary goal. We are seeing the return of the civilizational state. This is the idea that a country isn't just a government inside a border, but a unique empire that has a sacred mission to reclaim its lost glory. When you hear the Kremlin talk about Ukraine not being a real country, they aren't just insulting Kiev, they're laying the legal and moral groundwork for an imperial expansion that doesn't necessarily stop at the Ukrainian border. This leads us to a very modern contradiction. We're told that we live in a multipolar world where power is shared. Yet in 2025, the war has actually created two very rigid blocks. On one side, you have the old empires and their allies, Russia supported by the industrial might of China and the munitions of North Korea. On the other, you have the Western alliance, trying to defend the system based on rules and sovereignty. The confusion arises because many countries in the global south, like India or Brazil, refuse to pick a side. They see this not as a battle between good and evil, but as a clash of empires where they're better off staying neutral. This has turned Ukraine into a global proxy battleground where Asian soldiers and Western tech are fighting over European soil. Now, let's talk about the reality on the ground in late 2025. The war has entered what historians call the attrition phase, but with a high-tech twist. Russia is losing thousands of men for every square mile it gains, yet it continues to push forward. Why? Because an empire doesn't calculate cost like a business, it calculates costs like a crusade. In Moscow's view, if they have to sacrifice an entire generation to reunite the empire, that is a price they are willing to pay. This is why the sanctions, which were supposed to stop the war in weeks, haven't worked as expected. An empire with a holy mission is much harder to bankrupt than a standard nation-state. But there's a massive point of confusion regarding Ukraine's role in this. Is Ukraine just a victim, or is it something else? By late 2025, Ukraine has effectively become the shield of Europe. They have built one of the most battle-hardened and technologically advanced militaries on the planet. The irony of the return of empires is that by trying to erase Ukraine, Russia has accidentally finished the job of building a powerful, unified Ukrainian national identity. Ukraine is no longer just a former Soviet republic. It is a new power center in its own right. The most dangerous part of this new imperialism is the message it sends to the rest of the world. If Russia can successfully hold on to the land it has taken through sheer force, the post-war order is officially over. This is the confusion that keeps world leaders up at night. If the rule is might makes right, then every border in the world becomes a suggestion rather than a law. We are seeing ripples of this already. Other nations are looking at their own lost territories and wondering if the 21st century is actually just the 19th century with better cameras. As we look toward 2026, the war in Ukraine has become a forever war of a lower intensity. Neither side can win a total victory, but neither side can afford to lose.
Russia cannot admit that its imperial dream has failed, and Ukraine cannot admit that its territory is gone forever. This has created a frozen conflict that keeps the entire global economy in a state of permanent anxiety. The ships in the Black Sea, the gas pipelines in Siberia, and the chip factories in Taiwan are all connected to this one struggle. So, can the old empires really return? The answer is that they are already here, but they are finding the world a much harder place to conquer than it used to be. In the 1800s, an empire could take a territory and the world would eventually move on. In 2025, the world is too connected for that. Every drone strike in Kharkiv is felt in the stock markets of London and the energy bills of Tokyo. The return of empires is meeting a new reality, the resistance of the interconnected. The confusion we see today is the friction between two different versions of the future. One version says that the world belongs to the strongest empires. The other says that the world belongs to sovereign nations who work together. Ukraine is the place where these two futures are colliding. The war isn't just about who owns a specific city. It's about whether the 21st century will be defined by the freedom of the individual or the hunger of the empire. As we wrap up, it's clear that the War of Empires has changed the world forever. The old maps are being burned and the new ones are being drawn in blood and silicon. Whether unity and law can survive this imperial hunger is the question that will define the next 50 years of human history.